Dizzy Gillespie once called Louis Armstrong jazz in person. And here we have a woman who can rightfully be called animation in person. TISSA David is a revered presence who has dedicated her life and art to the craft of character animation. And she's going to show you a wonderful variety of her work that she's done for the Hubley Studio, for Ink Tank Studio, for Michael Sporn's studio, and she'll answer your questions as well. I'll give you a little bit of her background. Richard Williams once said that TISSA David knows perfectly well why she does something. She's an artist, that woman. And her artistic knowledge has been hard-won, for TISSA David must be recognized as a pioneer who has traveled a road that few women ever did in a male-dominated animation industry in America and in Europe. She is, for example, only the second woman after Lottie Reiniger to direct an animated feature, Bonjour Paris, in 1953. And her animation credits for both shorts and features is truly groundbreaking, and she did it through artistry, intelligence, guts, and a gritty determination to survive by working in the art form she loves. She was born in Hungary. Can I say when?
Oh, yes.
1921. She just turned 85, amazingly enough. And she began animating professionally in 1942 at the Hungarian Film Studio in Budapest, producing theatrical commercials using puppets as well as drawings. She worked through the siege of Budapest in December 1944, during which time the city was bombed for months, 3 times a day, by the Germans, the Russians, and the Americans. And she survived on horse meat and boiled beans. After the war, she and a friend co-owned a commercial studio until the Russian communists took over in 1949. And it was then she decided to leave her oppressed homeland and plotted a daring escape with another young woman. In 1950, March of 1950, the two women fled in a very dangerous zone, and over the next 3 months traveled through Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, and finally reached France. And in Paris, she learned to speak English, and she worked as a maid, as a cook, and later, as she says, up the social ladder to become a cleaning woman. She eventually found work at the animation studio of Jean Image, who was a well-connected Hungarian producer, and she was paid practically nothing, but she became the animation director of a feature-length cartoon called Bonjour Paris, which was released in 1953. And this was a historic appointment of a woman to a key creative position in the animation industry. 2 years later, at the age of 34, TISSA came to America. And in February 1956, she was hired at the UPA studio, United Productions of America, in New York as an assistant to the legendary animator Grim Natwick. Do you know Grim? Heard of Grim Natwick? He was the guy who designed Betty Boop, and he was one of Disney's chief animators on Snow White. So for 12 years, they had a professional partnership in which TISSA, as she says, made Grim look good by cleaning up his animation, but also taking large chunks of the animation and doing it on her own. When he retired in 1967, TISSA was unable to find employment as a solo animator. Nobody would hire me, she says. In America, animation was a jealously guarded men's field. So girls should be assistants, inkers, and painters, but not animators. Eventually, however, in 1970, John Hubley hired her, and he broke the industry's misogynist spell. Her association with the Hubleys and later R.O. Bleckman's Ink Tank, as well as Michael Sporn's studio, unleashed a well of creativity that brought TISSA David into her own as an animation artist of rare quality. And we're going to see how all of this experience works. She also worked as the chief animator on the animated feature that Richard Williams directed called Raggedy Ann and Andy. We have at the door there, as you come in, please take the handouts. They're 3 pages of TISSA's advice to animators about how to do animation very well. She believes that all animation is caricature, and she allows her graphic line to emerge out of the process of animation. Her work is incredibly human and warm and witty, and it has a great sensuality to it. You'll see a lot of that in what she's going to show you today. Anyway, we're very privileged to have this wonderful, legendary animator with us. Please welcome TISSA David.
It's always funny to hear this. In Paris, I didn't learn English, I learned French.
Oh.
Yeah, I learned English when I came to New York. Okay, so talk about animation. Animation is, it's not just, for me that was my life. I never did anything else, never wanted to do anything else. And I was just completely crazy about animation. And that's the only way you will ever become a good animator, if animation means everything for you and you don't ever compromise. Because animation is the most complex art form. You have to be a director, you have to be, first of all, you have to have an ability to draw, which you can't learn. Either you have it or you don't. You have to become a director, an actor. I think Frank Thomas said that every animator is a frustrated actor. Mm. And that is true. You have to be an actor to be an animator. Now, here I know I am talking to a place where it never happens. I never animate without a soundtrack. Now, if you want to do good animation, you always have a soundtrack, a voice track, mostly, because the personality of your character is in the voice. And take my word for it, because it's true. And I give you an example. A few years ago, for the program called Between the Lions, they have very funny spots. And we were doing one, the crow and the wolf, or the fox. And they gave me a very funny soundtrack. And after I got into animation, they said that they will change the voice. And I said, it's impossible. If I animate to this, it's going to be a different, oh, no, that won't be a problem. So, of course, I animated it to that very exaggerated, droll caricature of a voice. And it worked wonderfully. They changed it. They thought it was a little too much. So immediately, the picture didn't go with the sound, because it was a different personality. Now, if you can do it, do work with soundtracks. I know you people don't do that here, or do you?
Well, they do, actually. They're going to have an assignment next week in which they're using a couple of soundtracks from The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, good.
But what if you have a pantomime character?
Oh, that's a different thing. Then, for example, I have a pantomime here. I mean, just a silhouette. But I have a music going with it. So the music is also soundtrack. I need either one or the other. Otherwise, I am in limbo, and I don't even know where I am. So it's, now for example, John Hubley always did the soundtrack before he even sat down to make the drawings. And I asked him how he can make such beautiful soundtrack. He even put in the noises. He said, if it sounds good, then it's good. So that's, he can say that, but how many people know that it sounds good? Now, this is one advice I give you. Never do anything without soundtrack. The second advice I give you is never work without an exposure sheet. Do you have exposure sheet? Do you know what an exposure sheet is?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Good.
Whether they use them is another question. But
Oh, don't, you know, don't ever work without an exposure sheet. Because after you worked 50 years in animation, or 40 years, or 30 years, the line, the length of the line will give you timing. This is how timing and animation are interconnected. Because you know it's frame by frame lines. So when you hold something, you make a line. This is how. Then I look at the line, I say, no, I should go a little further. So this is how you will get a sense of timing just by using exposure sheet. So this is my second advice. Use exposure sheet, please. Okay, what else? It's, you know, when I have to talk about animation in 1 hour, then it's, I don't know what to say, because there is so much to say.
Tissa, what inspired you to get into animation?
It's very simple. I saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I was about 16 or something. I looked at it and I thought, now this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I never thought, I never had a second thought. I went to the Academy of Fine Arts in Budapest, and you come out from there either like a teaching in school or being a painter. And I knew I don't want any of those. I want to make animation. So after a few years, I didn't even finish it. I went, there was a studio and they did animation. So I went in there. I thought I will try it, and never left. I've never left the trade since. And that was 60-some years ago. And I worked all the way through, all the way through. There were some, a few years here and a few years there when I was without work. But generally, I can say that I worked through the 60 years. It's a lot of years, and you learn it. You learn it. I couldn't work on those. We were just looking at
the
those.
Cintiqs.
I couldn't work on that. I couldn't. I never could make a line on a celluloid, because I need the paper that's kind of pushes against me, and I need that sound of the paper and the pencil. And first of all, I need all those papers that show me what I am doing. It's such a beautiful thing animation is, because you actually create things that never existed. I remember many years ago, Leonard Maltin had a class at the New School, and he invited me he showed eggs. That was a Hubley film. And I animated eggs, and I haven't seen that for about 5 years. So I went there. I remember you and Michael were there. And when I saw the film, I had such a warm feeling. I had a feeling there's a female character in it. And I had a feeling that I knew that person very intimately years ago. And of course, because I animated it. But the moment I animated something, that person gets away from me. It becomes a living person. And I just meet that person every time when I see the film. And I never felt that strongly about the relationship I have with my characters. Mm-hmm. It's because they are all alive, and they are all kind of part of me, or my friends, or my... This is why I never feel alone, because there's so many of them around me, and they are. This sounds very corny, but it isn't. It sounds corny, but it's very real. It's very real. So.
TISSA, you started by animating puppets, didn't you?
No,
In
I really
Budapest?
started drawing, but then I got into that studio where we did a lot of commercials, and we did puppets.
Did you like animating puppets?
Not really. I wouldn't want to. At that time, it was part of life. I mean, we did more puppets than cell animation, and it was we did. In Europe, puppet animation was very, very normal. For example, it's a very high art in Czechoslovakia, but also in Hungary there are very good puppet animators, very sophisticated, and the still and the method that they use. I remember we had. I remember just one thing, a walking character. We had the 12th puppet, the different phases of the walk, the different drawings of the walk, and just used one after the other. It's a very slow thing. And because it's so slow, I never really felt the creative part of it. In drawing, I do feel that I am doing something, because one drawing comes after the other, I see it. But in puppet, that's not the way it is. I have to tell you that I never really liked puppet animation as much as I did animation drawing.
Tell us about your directing the animation in that feature, Bonjour Paris. How did that come about?
But it's just, but it's a very bad film, I have to tell you that. Yeah, it was. I worked for John Canemaker because I was Hungarian, he was Hungarian, so I went. A friend called him up or something, so he saw me. And he immediately realized that I will be working for almost nothing, and for him that was very important. So I started working on Bonjour Paris. And because I was the only one working, there was no such thing as assistant or in-betweener. I did the drawing and all the in-betweens. It slowly, and I not only animated the whole thing, but edited it. I read the soundtrack. That was before this magnetic soundtrack. It was the optical soundtrack that you can see. And it's very easy to cut it. For example, I remember the music was very good, relatively good. And sometimes I had to cut the music. It was very easy to cut because I could see the sentences of the music sentences. I could cut it so it never really missed a beat or anything. I couldn't work with that magnetic soundtrack because I am extremely visual. I have to see what I am doing. This is why I couldn't work on the computer, because it's, to me, this is not seeing. It happens without you seeing it, really. Anyway, I just told John that the only real advantage of the computer thing that for me, because I do very complicated camera moves. I drove the cameraman absolutely up the wall for 4 or 5 camera moves in one frame. But with the computer thing, everything is entering in a separate level. So I can move every single level as I want to. So I can use 12 different camera moves in the same frame. So that for me was a good thing. The rest I'm not for computer animation. I know you people are totally in computer, and it's good. It's good. That's the future. I am already bowing out, so it doesn't make any difference. And
how did you decide to come to America?
But that was very much decided for me. I had 2 cousins who lived here, one in Chicago, one in Ohio. And in France, you don't really get a permission to stay. So I had no choice. I had to decide, and I decided it wasn't very tough. It took 5 years to get my visa. And by then, in that 5 years, I learned to love Paris so much that it was like breaking away, it almost bleeding to death. But I did succeed, and it's a good thing, because this is where animation really was at that time. Now you find it other places too. But at that time, really animation was an American art. It really was an American art because it started here. And I was just so fortunate when I came here. I decided in Paris that I want to work at UPA because that's the only studio that really interested me. And
what films had you seen of UPA?
Oh, all the UPA films were shown in Paris, and it was so popular that even if it was a bad feature, and there were 2 UPA pictures going with it, there was a line around the corner just to get into the cinema. So I saw all the UPA films that was done in France.
Gerald McBoing-Boing?
Oh, all of them.
Mr. Magoo?
All. Mr. Magoo wasn't so much yet. I saw a couple of Mr. Magoo's. Mr. Magoo came a little later. First, all those fabulous short films. Do you know the UPA pictures? You do. They are great, aren't they? You see, they were so much imitated, you don't realize that when they came out, it was like a bomb. I mean, it was like an explosion. It was something extraordinary. And the thing that, for example, there was never any cruelty. None of the UPA films had any cruelty at all. Nothing. They were always very gentle and very and fabulous. Mm-hmm. It's great films. So I was so fortunate. I came here, and they needed an assistant. I didn't even speak English. I mean, 3 words. So I came, and they said they will call me in when they need it. So I was living with a friend. And they called me in a couple of weeks later. They got a lot of Pierce Brothers films, and they needed assistance. And Grim Natwig came for a visit from Wisconsin. He was visiting Wisconsin. So he came, he thought before he goes back to California, he takes a visit, makes a visit in New York. So he came, and they said, stay, we have enough work for 2 months. And so they called me in. Grim Natwig was a big man with a big voice, and I couldn't understand much. So there he came. I was sitting there very small, and he came in and said, do you know what animation is? And I said, yes, animation is animation. And he said, I couldn't argue with that. So then I became his assistant and worked with him for 12 years. Then he went back to California for
So in a way, you were working with someone who did the animation of Snow White that inspired you to get into animation, and
Yes.
here you were working for UPA, which you admired.
Yes,
to get you here.
it's almost a destiny. You can make it as an example of something extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
He was a most generous person. I mean, everything he knew, he was trying to give away. You couldn't ask him anything that he wouldn't be willing to explain or answer or help you with it. It's fantastic. You see, there were many other animators working at UPA. Everybody was very careful to hide the way he was. Grim went all over. He was a very open, you know Grim, of course. He was he was born in August. It's a Leo. He was a typical Leo. I mean, it's just so open and so embracing everybody and helping and giving. And it's a fabulous, fabulous thing. And I learned everything I know about animation. I learned it from him. And I didn't even realize as it was happening. And I realize now that when I make a line, it's something in my brain that comes from Grimm. It's, you see, this is where I was fortunate, and you probably aren't, that there are no great animators around to work with, because this is how you learn that trade. Either on your own, which is always slower and more painful, because you have to make mistakes and discover things, or a great master who tells you everything. And how close we worked, I give you an example, it's quite interesting. At Bob Lawrence, we worked, I had my desk here and he had, so we were sitting, we had a room of our own, sitting back to back. And I was working and suddenly Kim said, tell me Tissa. And I turned around, I said, 7 frames. He didn't ask me the question. And he said, how did you know? He was asking how many frames should he hold a certain drawings. And I just gave that. I said, 7 frames. It's, this is how close we worked. Yeah. Then the other great guy was then John Hubley, with whom I worked for 7 years, 6 or 7 years.
Now, he's the only one who would give you a job.
Yeah, he was the only one. You know,
why?
In the 60s, I was doing little animation for him. And that was at the time when there was an animators union. And the woman at the union office said that, you know, the animators are complaining that you are animating. I told to John that they are complaining, and John said I couldn't care less. So this is how he gave me work to animate.
So they really refused women?
I mean, it was just unheard of, and the animators disliked the fact that I dare animate when I am wearing skirt. That time we were wearing skirts. It was not so much the slacks. So anyway, that's the way I got into animation in New York.
We have some of the Hubley.
Yes.
Do you want to
Now,
see some?
I have a Hubley reel here. Those things were done for this electric company and Sesame Street. Now, I would like you to watch it from this point of view. Those are always very limited animations. Now, limited animation doesn't mean it has to be bad animation. Contrary, it's just a different style of animation. When you learn how to animate limited, in a limited way, and when you learned it, then you can make very good animation with limited. For example, in the Disney studios, I feel that they are over-animating. They are making too many drawings. That is not necessary. For example, if the Japanese film, Spirited Away, there is that little, I am sure you know that, there is that little girl. It's beautiful animation. And it's really a very limited animation. But it's so beautiful. So it's not, it really doesn't have to, something doesn't have to be over-animated to be good. So anyway,
I think you once said it's not how many drawings, but it's how you use them.
How you use the drawings. Now those are all very limited animations, and they are not bad, I think.
Okay. Would you get the lights, Ben, please? Thank you.
invited a friend of mine over to have a little dinner. If I can meet him. Here he is, the letter M. You can see what he looks like. He sounds like this. Right. So if you'll step over this way, I've got a little dinner on the table. Go ahead, dig right in. Make yourself at home. Marvelous. Meat. Magnificent. Marshmallows. Milk. Melon. I just don't believe that. I mean, you're just about the greenest, rudest letter I ever saw. You ate up everything. I'll tell you one thing. Never invite an M over to your house for dinner. Don't try to make up with me. Next time I'll invite a J or a polite Q, but not another M.
The skull is connected to the skeleton. 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 Skeleton. Give me some skin.
Shucks. I need a shower. Shucks. I need a shampoo. Shucks. I need a shoe shine. Shucks. Ain't I Yeah, I'm a cool, pool, fool. Yeah, I'm a cool, pool, fool. Yeah, I say cool. I say pool, fool. Sleep. At last. What was that? A fly. Whoa, what's that? A chicken. What's that? A drum playing racket. Oh. Good. Oh.
I want the truth, the plain old truth. I need the truth. But tell the truth. Woo! Give me the truth. Nothing but the truth. You know the truth. Gotta have the truth.
My name's Pearl.
Where'd you learn all those dance moves, TISSA?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I
you
don't
study-
dance. I don't dance.
Did you study the tap dancing for the penguins?
No. It's interesting. I have a piece of animation. It's just a pencil test. That no, I will have it on one of the commercials. A tap dance. It's very interesting. I will tell you now. I had to do a tap dance, and I had a soundtrack, which was very closely read. I had steps every 2 frames, sometimes every frame. See, we have 2 legs, so one leg can do it, 1 frame the other. And I tried all kind of, how should I do it so that it steps, that it hits the ground. So after all kind of trial, I realized that if you want to hit really have the hit, you have to have, just before the hit, you have to have a little, the whole thing was almost on single frames because of that close reading. You have to have at least 2 frames or 3 frames hold before it hits. Otherwise, it does not hit. So remember that. If you want to hit something, you have a little hold before it, and then you hit. So I thought I will do, they gave me some of the Fred Astaire live action things, you know, where every frame is another page. It's like almost one of those things that, yes, but this was live action thing. And I studied and I thought, if you animate step dance, you don't do a live action step dance. It shouldn't be live action step. It should be an animated step dance. And animation, this is very important, remember, animation is not copying of live action. Animation is action that never occurs, never really comes or occurs in real life. Now, one was that step. You hold it for 2 frames, 3 frames, then hit. The hit can be just 1 frame. It shouldn't be more than 1 frame. But the little hold before it is going to do the trick. Now, I can't really dance, but for some reason, I animate dance quite successfully. It's never really, you couldn't teach dance from my dancing characters because they are not real dancers, but they look like real dancers. So this was the lady with the true blue, no, not true blue. Gladys. She's dancing. I remember that. I took that was time when we still had the soundtrack on a record. So I played that record. I took the character, John always designed the character, and took the soundtrack and went home. I lived just a few blocks from the studio. And then I always spent about 2 days before I sat down to animate. I was vacuuming. And as I was vacuuming, I did those steps. Now, it's really not a dance, but it looks like she's dancing because it's somehow it looks like. And it's very interesting how I got into the mood of her. This is why she sometimes looks like I. At that time, now I'm different, but at that time I looked pretty much like that. So that was another dance. Then there was a little penguin. It's just, there was a reading, and I just knew that she or he, whatever, it's supposed to give the beat, or imitate the beat he hears. That was either the typewriter or the drum. That was for kids for Sesame Street. So they learn rhythm and how the rhythm works. And it somehow turned out, and John put that little pen into the background. It makes it very lovely.
What about
but
the cool fool?
Cool Pool Fool, isn't that a great character? I mean, he's just, now that is Dizzy's voice.
Dizzy Gillespie.
Yes, he was a good friend of John. And that is also rhythm. Now, for example, here is where he makes that noise. At that time, I had a lion lamp. That was I could test my own animation home. I just did it and then I tested it. I didn't want to do that, and I was trying to, and then I finally realized that he brings up and I hold it here for a few frames before he hits. Then he hits. So remember that. If you want to hit something, you put a pause, just a few frames, 2 frames, 3 frames, depending what the beat is in the thing. You just put a pause and then it will hit. So, for example, if you have an explosion, for example, I don't have it here, but we did at UPA, I remember there was a flower explosion, 10 billion petals of flower. Didn't want to work, just did not want to work. So then, here was that bouquet of flower. So what had to be done is bring down to a very condensed bunch of flower and then explode. So you come down, you hold it, bang, and the next frame is way out, you know? So it's remember that. If you want to hit something, if you want to have a punch, you always have a hold before it. You go and you hold it and you go to the next string. Does it make sense? Okay. So that, remember that. what else was there? Oh,
You want to see the pig?
okay. Now this is this was Michael Sporn did that. That's a very lovely book. It's a little marzipan pig, and whoever eats that marzipan pig suddenly becomes very loving. So the first person is a mouse that eats, then an owl eats the mouse. Then the owl, where the owl was on the tree, there's a little flower that comes out from the ground. And the little bee sips the nectar out of that thing and fills the marzipan. And then she flies into a room, and there is a, what kind of flower is that?
Hibiscus.
Yeah, hibiscus flower. And this is a scene where when the little bee goes into the room and talks to the hibiscus. The hibiscus is a kind of a British lady, kind of. It's very, she's really obnoxious, but she's very sweet.
But tell them how few drawings you used for the hibiscus.
Very few.
Lip sync.
No, very few, but you will see it again, because I hit, she has a very good, the sound is great. So I just hit she doesn't have a lips, she is just a flower. But by hitting the accents on that word, it's somehow you feel that she has lips. She doesn't. There is another thing that was important here. Maybe I will remember. No, I don't. I wanted to say something else that is important. Now, for example, voice. I wrote down her words, and I underline the most important points in her reading. It's really it's a he. What is the name of that actor who? It's an British, very good actor.
Tim Curry.
Yeah, Jim Curry narrates the whole thing, everybody's voice and the narration. It's just one reading. It's beautiful, and there is that little bee. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. The bee. That's a very long scene, and the bee is flying all over the place. Now, because the bee, the fly, the wings have to move very fast, that was single frame animation. And it keeps on going and going and going. So what I did, I decided on a curve that, let's say, here is the room.
No, there's,
Oh, yeah, that's, and I can take it off. Yeah. Let's say that this is where the bee flies. Here is the flower. Okay, so what I did, here is this distance, which can be done by penning the drawings, so that's not a problem. And here is the other distance, okay? So what I did that many drawings of the bee, one drawing up wings and the other drawing down wings, okay? And I penned it and used drawings down, which means by penning it, this is what you see on the scene. So I have maybe 30 drawings of the wing, and it goes on. You will see how long, very long time. So always think you have the possibility to move back and forth, to move the camera up and down. This is not so easy to move, so this is why I did those drawings. But by doing these drawings, I have moving the background. This is how it looks like. You see? Can you know what I'm talking about? So, and then I had, for each drawing, I had one bee with the wing up, one with wing up, down. And that's the way all those drawings are done. And it's just the background moves back and forth, and the drawings are using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, let's say. So remember that don't make a million drawings because it's not necessary. It's not necessary. You can do everything just using your head and all the knowledge, all the vast knowledge that you learned from Mr. Canemaker.
Also notice the interesting shapes of the flower, the way she tries, even though it doesn't have lips, the shapes are really quite wonderful when the flower speaks.
Oh yeah, because it's...
Because it's...
Because I had to do that because it has no lips. So it's a flower change, but you will see.
All right.
Okay. Oh, I could do that.
Honestly, when the bee woke up, it was dark. The houses standing opposite the common and the trains that rumbled past it were all lit with golden windows. The street lamps showed their globes of bluish light. Footsteps and shadowy figures passed on the pavement. There was a full moon over the trees. There was a smell of honeysuckle in the air. The bee looked up at the moon. "No sun," said the bee. "I can't possibly find my way home without the sun to go by. I'll have to stay in town tonight." The bee flew up over the street lamps and past the top floor windows of the houses. At number 6, a window was open, and the bee saw the face of a pinky orange hibiscus looking round the edge of the window frame. The bee flew into the room and saw that the hibiscus was growing out of a pot that stood on top of a bookshelf about 1.5 feet to one side of the window. The stem of the plant leant to the window and curved up gracefully so that the flower could look out. The bee flew round the flower and hovered in the darkness of the room, smelling the pinky orange perfume of the hibiscus and looking at the light from the street lamp shining through her leaves and petals. "Seen enough," said the hibiscus. "I'm sorry," said the bee. "I didn't mean to be rude." It flew around to the front where the flower could see it. "You're not a gentleman, are you?" said the hibiscus. "No," said the bee. "And I'm not a lady either. I'm just a worker." "Never mind," said the hibiscus. "You can't all be posh." "I might have been a queen," said the bee. "Oh, yes," said the hibiscus. "And I might have been the Duchess of Gloucester, but I'm not." "You've gone to a lot of trouble to look out of that window," said the bee. "That's not me, that's the plant," said the hibiscus. "The plant stays, but the flowers come and go. Now I've had my turn. Tomorrow morning I'll be lying on the floor all crumpled like a dress thrown down after a dance." The bee didn't say anything. "At least I got a full moon for my last night," said the hibiscus. "That's something. I wish I could have music." She began to hum in a high, tinkly voice. "They play records here sometimes, but they're out tonight. It's getting colder, isn't it?" She drew her thin and pinky orange petals in a little. "So cold," she said, and wrapped her petals closer around her. "I can't even sing for you," said the bee. "I can do a honey dance, though. Shall I dance for you?" "Oh, yes," said the hibiscus. "Dance for me, do. Do it on the windowsill so I can see you and the moon together." "This is the dance that tells where the sweetest nectar is," the bee said. "It means sweet, sweet, so sweet, 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 this way." "Sweet, sweet, so sweet," murmured the hibiscus, as the bee danced by the light of the street lamp and the trains rumbled past the common under the sinking moon. "Sweet, sweet, this way." As the bee danced, it gave off the faintest scent of marzipan that mingled with the pinky orange perfume of the hibiscus. "Sweet, sweet," whispered the hibiscus. She drew her petals tightly round her and drooped towards the sinking moon.
Fly away now for the honey, he said to the bee. Fly, so I can see you flying against the last of the yellow moon. I wish I could have been a gentleman for you, said the bee. And it flew off towards the golden passing windows of the district line and the last of the yellow moon.
That's beautiful.
Okay.
That's a wonderful
Now,
sequence.
you saw that 4 little dots? That is, I have no, it doesn't connect with anything. It's just there. And you know a hibiscus flower. It has that thing with the long thing and then the end, those little dots. But somehow, by using those dots, I could add to the character of what she was saying. So that's, I thought it was, she spoke very important. Lip sync is, now the most important thing that says the story, says the word, is the closed lips. You only close your lips on M, B, and then you can have a license in cases like sometimes, if necessary, S could be a closed mouth, and F, of course, is a very small closed mouth. So that is what tells the thing. If you have always the thing open, you will never learn, never talk. Now, the other important thing, at the end of the word, let's say it says room, okay? Room, you close the thing. If you want him to say the M, you have to open up the mouth after the M is sounded. So M. You cannot keep, if you keep the mouth closed on the M, it will never say the M. And that is true with every letter. When the end of the word comes, it has to open up the mouth. But let's say it's very rare that we end the word with a big mouth. Tell me a word that ends with a big mouth, like A.
That ends with an A?
Yeah.
Aha.
Oh yeah, but that's not a word.
Okay.
No, it's usually you close the mouth.
Aloha.
So aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah, but you see, those are not really words. Anyway, the word has to be closed, and you open it up to be sure that that last letter is said. Does it make sense? I mean, can you understand my? Yeah.
You have a question for TISSA, anybody?
The other thing, let me tell you something. Somebody told me, don't you have to always close the mouth after a word was said? I said, no. You finish a word, and the next word comes later. Even in real life, you keep your mouth as it was in the last frame of that word, which is usually a slightly open mouth. So M, if you want to say that M, you have to open the mouth after the M sounded, just slightly. And you can keep it open like this until the next word starts, okay? That is something important of lip sync. It's funny, I watch very often very old animation, the early 30s when they started to animate the mouth because that was lip sync. it's always overdone. It's too much moving of the mouth. You don't need that. I am sure you don't need it, unless it's extremely loud, screaming or something. So don't overdo anything. Please, just do just as much as it's absolutely necessary. And do it the simplest possible way. The best way between 2 points is the straight way. And don't go out of that straight line unless you have to for some reason. Yes?
Is it also true that body language is important,
Oh, yeah.
perhaps more important than just the lips moving?
Yes, yes. I do believe that the body and what you do with the body tells the story more than any words. Bodies, and don't forget that animation in a strange way is always a kind of a dance. I think of it like a dance. Now, for example, when I had commercials and it was just lip sync, I always had the metronome, never used stopwatch because it's always going to fool you. The best thing is the metronome. I always worked on that metronome until I found a tempo, a rhythm to that reading, whatever. It was usually just narration. But I always found the rhythm to that narration. And I always animated to that rhythm, even if there was no. Which one you are showing
I always
next?
thought Midsummer Night's Dream because it's pantomime.
Oh, okay. All right. Because then later on there will be a reel of commercials. And keep that in mind, that I always animated, in every animation. In Midsummer Night's Dream, that was very easy because it was music, it was read, and I always had the sheets of music. So I animated to by the way, of that Midsummer Night's Dream, I gave you you remember that
The
big
drawings,
thing?
yes.
Yeah. Now there you can see how I work. I have the reading, that's a bar sheet. And I have the reading, then I have always, I cut up the music sheets, and I always pasted down the corresponding notes. And I also have a rough drawing of what the action is. Now that is really your, when you made a bar sheet, you made that part of the work, it's almost animated because everything is there. Now, in this case, it's music, so it was easy to animate. Now, the Midsummer Night's Dream, this section is when the Titania, and we didn't, this really is not the story of the Midsummer Night's Dream, it's just a crazy film. But it happens to be, in that case, that Titania and the donkey are away there, and they have a, how you call it?
Orgy.
Interaction. Yes.
Orgy, have
Whatever.
an affair, something.
Whatever.
But it's all done in pantomime,
It's all black and white, black and blue
silhouette.
silhouette. And a lot of, I think those are petals or whatever. Thelma, you will see.
It's wonderful because the drawings are so distinct and the poses are so strong that you know exactly what's going on even though there are no features. It's all silhouetted. This is a great sequence. You want to see Titania a little bit? Can we show a little bit of Titania next?
Oh, if you
Just-
want to.
She's wonderful. She's a wonderful animator of women.
That's it.
Okay. Such a wonderful, sensuous, womanly quality to that.
It's very fat. Yeah, but it's the whole thing is just a crazy thing. This was done in Holland, and it was done for the Holland television, Channel 4 in London, and the South German TV. And it was a German guy who wanted to have that piece of music animated. Now, they made so many times and very beautiful ones, so we didn't want to compete. We were just 3 people who did that whole thing. And so we thought, instead of doing the real Midsummer Night's Dream, we just did it as a concert at the Rotterdam concert hall. And while the conductor, there's a photo in the book, and as he turns the page, there is her girlfriend. Now, we wanted to have a naked woman, but they said no. it had to be dressed up, so she's dressed up. But anyway, that brings out Puck from his head. Puck is that crazy little green guy. Anyway, so all the characters are there, except it has really nothing to do with the Midsummer Night's Dream, except it's the Mendelssohn's incidental music to that thing. We enormously enjoyed doing it, and it was shown on Channel 4 several times, I think.
Tissa, do you want to talk about your use of stretch and squash? Even on the Daisy, there was a nice stretch before the thing comes off. And
It's really, there is no, I have no rules. I have no rules. I do stretch. I stretch something if I want to show that there is that thing is sticking there. Then I stretch it. But I have no really rules. And don't have rules, because if you have rules, except the basic ones, if you have rules, then you will just cliche animate everything. It's not really good. But when you want to express something that she really has to make a little effort to get that petal out of that daisy, then you use a little stretch. But otherwise, or for example, when she combs her hair, I do stretch it, because that gives that bounce, zing bang, that gives, do something every time that you think will add to what you are doing. That's not a very good thing to.
we understand.
Yeah, but keep that in mind. If it adds to it, I use it. If it's just there for its own sake, don't do it. Don't do it, because then you become a cliche animator, and never be a cliche animator. Even today, after so many years in animation, every time I sit down to animate something, it's almost as if I never, ever animated anything before. It's a brand new thing, and I don't remember how I did it the last time, because I don't remember how I did it the last time. I do it every time the way it just comes, and I just let it do. But somebody asked me, and I said, if I want to do with the character something that I think that character should do, it doesn't work. I have to have the character do what she or he wants to do. I know that doesn't make sense, what I just said, but if you think of it when you animate, then you will know what I am talking about. The character has its own life, and if you listen to the soundtrack, you know that this is true. And if the character does what she wants to do, then it will be correct. Otherwise, it's just something forced on that character, and that's never really. Then I would be fighting a scene for days, and nothing happens. And then exasperation, I just put everything down, throw everything out, start again, and let the character do what she wants, and then it works. I know it doesn't make sense, but it does make.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Lisa, can you talk a little about holding a character still?
What I'm doing. There are very long halls there, beautiful long halls. There is an action that goes into a hold, and it's just there. You see, when I do that, I stay put for a while, because by staying put really says that I'm trying to say something important. The hold is the most important part of your animation, and take my word for it, because it's true. Now, the hold doesn't start, 6 frame is not a hold, 8 already. 6 frame is really a hesitation, but 8 frame already registers, 12, 24, and you can hold it even longer. You can hold it 100 frame if you like to. It hit hit something very nice and strong and just hold it there. You don't go into a hold very soft, because then you feel like going out of it immediately. But when you hit something strong, you can hold it. You can hold it. It feels good, and it works good. And don't be afraid of holding. It's important. It's really important. It's the most important part of your animation, that you know where to hold and how long to hold something.
It also helps you to make the character think, doesn't it? Give you more time, and you.
But yes, of course, if you want to put it that way, yes. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you just have to hold it. Otherwise, your story is not being told. I mean, you are not saying what you try to say if you don't hold it there for a while. Anyway, keep that in mind. It's important to hold. Yeah. And keep also in mind that a hold starts to 8 frame, 12 frame is already a nice little hold. 16, I always think of double, I mean numbers 6, 8, 12, 16, not 15 or 13 or 11. You can hold it, of course, if you like to. Also, you hit, now let's say you have a music beat. You can hit a beat well 4, 6 frames ahead of time. Now, for example, Eliza Minnelli has a beautiful timing. I haven't seen her 100 years, on TV, but it captured me. She always hits the beat way ahead of time. And that gives a double meaning to that beat. So instead of hitting right on the beat, of course you can hit it on the beat. But if you hit it ahead of time, 4 frames, 6 frames, it gives a depth to that beat. So keep that in mind.
How does an animator learn timing?
By doing it. And then you will do a lot of very bad timing. And then slowly you will get the taste of it. It becomes your second nature, that you know what is a good frame number for something. Timing is so precious that even 1 frame makes a difference. It does make a difference. And of course, if you become, great clowns. Now watch Chaplin. That is a great timer. You can watch Chaplin and you know what timing is, because and also you know what action is. Now, for example, Chaplin doesn't just put a key into a keyhole and turn the thing. He puts it in, he holds it, then he turns it, then he turns. It's made of steps, and that makes it so beautiful. And his timing is perfect. And watch great clowns. They have great timings.
You saw Grach once, who was a great legendary European clown. Can you talk about that?
Yes. He was a Swiss. He was from Switzerland. And I lived in Paris. And he had his last appearance at the Winter's circus. In a circus in Paris. And I had a friend, and we went to see him. That was one of the greatest things I ever saw. His timing was absolute perfection. To the frame perfection. The way he turned a page, or the way he played the violin. It was just perfect. Perfect, beautiful timing. Beautiful. It just breaks your heart. It really, when you see perfect timing, you know you see perfect timing, because it does something to you. that just breaks your heart. It's so beautiful. I tell you, what was the name? You see how senile I am getting. That great Canadian who died.
The great Canadian.
Yeah, at the Canadian Film Board.
Oh, Norman McLaren.
McLaren. Now, McLaren timing was perfection. He animated everything on single frame, of course. But his timing was perfect. I remember McLaren when he was in Paris. He was just a young man. He lived in England and came over to Paris. He had showed things, and then he was just, we asked a million questions and he answered. But as he grew older, his timing was always good, was great. But as he grew older, his timing became perfect, beautiful. I mean, if it was a frame this way or that way, it would have been less perfect. I mean, he just hit everything as it should be done. It's, to me, great timing is really the top of all the arts. And timing is not just dance, or it's in talking, in moving, in everything has timing, everything. Drawing, everything is timing. The timing is the secret magic word to every art.
And cooking.
Even to a painter.
And you're a good cook.
Oh, even to cooking, of course. No, yes, I like to cook.
And Tissa, we have 7 commercials that you did that are last 30 seconds each. So your timing in this.
Yeah,
would be
those
something
are. It's well, I can talk about them later, but those are the 7 commercials I picked out. I did hundreds of commercials, but somehow they represent something, each of it, and they are also, with little exception, they are very limited animations. Today, really, you work in a limited animation, but you didn't really. It didn't hurt you, the limited animation. All the films you saw so far were very limited animations, nothing of the Disney millions of drawings. No, nothing at all. Neither we didn't have time, the means, and we didn't think it was necessary to make 1 million drawings when you can say the same thing with 10 drawings. So, for example, the Cool Pool Fool, that snake, it's 100 drawings and it's a minute spot. Now, it's not a very bad record for being a limited thing. So anyway.
You see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, let me just shut up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the real world. Welcome to chaos. To confusion.
What?
To overwhelm. Luckily, there's the New York Times. The Times helps make order out of chaos. Turns overwhelm into just, well, because these times, it's not enough to know just the who, what, where, when, and how. These times demand you know the why. And that's why these times demand the Times.
C'est magnifique, un miracle. Refreshing Perrier, created by the Earth when it was new. Perrier, Earth's first soft drink.
Comparen con café con los piedras, sí que vamos a tocar. Aquí usted no me adivina, aquí usted no me adivina cuál de los dos fue el primero. Entre el huevo la gallina, fue la gallina, fue el huevo, fue el huevo, fue el huevo, fue el huevo.
Toughest thing about success is you gotta keep on being a success.
The Northern Trust Banker has ideas to keep your growing business ahead of the competition. Give us a call. Northern Trust Banks put our ideas to work for you.
Here's Mr. Bubble. Hiya, folks. Did you hear about the Bubble who took singing lessons? She got a job in a soap opera. But seriously, did you know I help get rid of bathtub rings? Of course, if my bathtub rings, I don't answer it. How about the relationship between the Bubble and the porcupine? What a bust. And then there's the Bubble whose wife pulled the plug on him. He really felt drained.
Now, Mr. Bubble Bubbleback makes getting clean almost as much fun as getting dirty.
Hey, we can make beautiful bubbles together.
Now, I have to tell you that this step dance thing, I animated, as I told you, to a very close breeding. And then when they made the final soundtrack, they didn't even they didn't look at the film. They just did the soundtrack. So the step dance is not exactly what was with the original working soundtrack. So I was very angry with them because it's so unprofessional to do a thing like that. But it works because they put enough step there to, it looks like it's working, but I see it isn't. So it doesn't. Okay.
How about some questions for TISSA?
Yes.
So, as far as timing goes, is it just instinctual when to hold things and when to move things? I mean, okay, that story you told about Graham Cole, 7 frames, that's just you learn it as you go?
Yes, but it depends what you are saying. Now, I should have a positive. So if somebody is talking, for example, and have a gesture, I don't know how to illustrate it. It has to, you have to hit something. In your animation, you want to hit something, then you hold it. When you have an accent, you hold it. So you don't just put holes in it for no reason. I didn't say that. And I want to make sure that you didn't misunderstood me. When you are saying something and you have an accent, you hold on that accent. Whenever it feels like holding, or somebody is listening to something, don't be afraid of holding it. Or somebody is, I don't know, somebody's dancing gets to a point where it's normally, it's natural to start. You have to, there has to be a reason for a hold. You don't just hold it without reason. There has to be a reason. But when there is a reason to hold, then don't be afraid of holding it. Okay? Yes?
You said that it sounded corny to say that you're never alone because
Yes.
the characters are always there. And that's the thing that interests me the most about cartooning and drawing.
Yes.
I was just wondering if you could elaborate about, you know, what that means and how that comes about and how you recognize when it's all living.
It's very hard to say more than what I did. It's because all the characters that I worked on came out from very deep inside of me somewhere. And this is the reason for it, you see? Because it is part of you. And if it's part of you, it's always with you. And it's without you knowing it. As I told you when I went to that lesson, I mean, at the school, and I saw that film I haven't seen for 5 years or something. And then suddenly, I had that very deep feeling inside of me that I knew that person very intimately. This is like in real life. You like somebody, and you don't see that person for a long time. Then you see it again, and you have that recognition that you know that person in an intimate way. That's exactly the same way. I can't really say more than that because I don't know how that works. I just know it does work. Yeah.
Have you had acting experience, TISSA?
No, in school I played in comedies. I was always the comic character. And don't ever, anything that you do in animation has to have a comic family. And don't be afraid of being funny. Not clowning or it's just let it be funny. If you can choose between a funny and a serious, pick the funny one, the action or anything. And it doesn't have to be very conscious. As you go along, those things will be natural to you. Just naturally, you will do the droll thing instead of the sentimental. Don't ever be sentimental, because that's not even a real feeling. Be sure that whatever feeling you express should be real, not something that you read somewhere, or it just should be your own real feeling, and don't be afraid of it. And that's what I can say.
Other questions?
Yes.
Did you notice any large differences working in a European studio versus an American studio?
Oh, it's very different, but it was so long ago that I always worked in European. When I came here, then I saw the difference between there and here. And I also immediately saw the difference of the quality of animation here. Because their animation, it's different now, because they learned a great deal. But animation was very, very poorly done over there. They just tried to do it. Of course, now you have great European or Japanese and all kind of animation. But at that time, there was a big difference, yes. It's, for example, when I started, there was no such thing as exposure sheet. On the paper we worked on, the frame number 565, 566 was written, and that they had to be shot on those numbers. I mean, the cameraman had the calculator, the number, the frame.
The dial frame number?
Yes, and then he just shot whatever was written on the paper. There was no such thing as exposure sheet. I used the first exposure sheet in Paris, not in Hungary. So it was that far back. And then of course, here, I learned the importance of exposure sheet.
Other questions for TISSA?
Yeah, I am always so happy when there are so many people who are interested in animation, because it's you see, you are the next generation of animation, and it's probably there is so much in animation that was never tried before, and you can try them all. So just keep on doing it.
TISSA, I think we have eggs on the end of the Hovely reel. Would you like to see eggs and talk about it?
No.
No? You don't want to see it?
No, not really.
Okay.
No.
It's one of your great performances.
Oh, I don't know.
Would you like to see another one by TISSA? They'd like to see it.
I tell you what I would rather have, when the mouse eats the marzipan pig.
Okay.
And then, now this is, I tell you why this is interesting. There is a marzipan pig that falls behind the sofa. And for months and months, nobody knows what happens. That shows what a nice, clean house. Nobody looks behind the sofa. And one night, a mouse comes and eats him. And then, of course, immediately, that's the whole secret of marzipan pig, becomes very loving. And there is a big grandfather clock in the room. And it's interesting how from that corner, your eye is brought to that big clock. I remember that when I did the storyboard, when the mouse talks to the clock, I had them profiled. Here was the clock, here was the mouse. And when I get to the animation, I realized that doesn't work that way. I have the clock when he speaks, and I have the mouse very tiny when she speaks. I don't know if she's a she, but for me she's a she. So it's a very nice relationship from the mouse to the clock.
So is it past the flower?
No,
Okay.
it's way before.
Way before,
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
So let's see if we can just find it.
The upstairs mouse.
Now that's the upstairs, that's the later.
Yeah, so this is the flower.
This is the flower.
Yeah. I just love the animation in this. It's so perfect, succinct, and here's the bee.
Now this section, for example, don't just go. This is too long, the owl section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were these drawings that were cut out onto cell, or?
I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they. I know that I drew them. I think they Xeroxed the drawings, and then. Okay, now
here's the
go
clock.
back a little more.
Yeah.
More. No, more. Okay, you can about here.
Started now?
Yes.
There was a time when I was sweet, said the pig, but I have known such sweetness, murmured the mouse, and she ate him up entirely. After eating the pig, the mouse dozed for a time behind the sofa. When the clock struck 3, she woke up. I wonder what that pig was going to say, she said. I couldn't stop eating him, but now I wish I'd listened. In her were a craving and a sadness she had never known before. I'm so alone, she said. It's so quiet here. She listened, and she listened to the ticking of the clock. She watched the moving glimmer of the pendulum in the dim light from the street lamp. Speak to me, she said to the clock. Do. Night, said the clock. Only night. Well, surely there's more, said the mouse. Lonely night, the clock said. Lonely night. Ah, the loneliness, the mouse said. That's what the pig was going to say, I'm sure of it. Minutes, hours, days, and years, the clock said. You have a kind face, said the mouse. Make me happy, love me, do. 3:30, said the clock, and went on ticking. You've more than that to say to me, said the mouse. She gnawed a little hole in the case of the clock and crept inside it so that she could be closer to the moving glimmer of the pendulum. She sat there listening to the ticking and the striking of the hours, but the clock would tell her nothing but the time. In the morning, the mouse came out of the clock and went back behind the skirting board, but she came back that night and every night and sat inside the clock and waited for the clock to say it loved her. But the clock would tell her nothing but the time. One night she didn't come back. The clock struck midnight, and there was no mouse. 12:30, 12 and 1 o'clock, and still no mouse. While the lamp shone outside the window, he struck all the hours and half-hours of the night, but the mouse never came. The little warm place where she used to sit was cold and empty. By day, the clock could feel himself coiled tight inside and waiting for the night. By night, he felt the empty place inside him as he waited for the day to come. The next time he was wound, his spring broke and his ticking stopped, and time went on without him.
That's it. Yeah, it's very nice how from the mouse we just suddenly hear the clock. It's in real life too. You suddenly hear something that was there all the time, but you just didn't hear it. But here the clock comes, the tick-tock comes in. And by the way, the way I animated is not right, but I couldn't change it. It was just another. When you animate a pendulum like that, you put hold at the end of it. You go here to there, and you hold it there for just 3, 4. This is a 24 frame movement, but I could have held 4. It's just a little hold. Could be 6 frame, and then move from here to here, hold, here to here, hold. I didn't do that, and that's couldn't be changed because it was just another job. All the jobs, there was not enough time to do, so there was never money or time to reshoot things. So it's always, everything is shot just once. Even in the Midsummer Night's Dream or Hubley, there was never any pencil test. All those drawings were done and went into production, and no changes ever. So it's just, it's a very good school to animate like that, because you learn your timing by being really squeezed. And what taught me a great deal is when I had that lion lamb and I was able to shoot my own animation, and I shot it many times, different lengths of whole drawing, held drawings, and I learned the finesse of timing. So that's it.
Well, I want to thank TISSA David very much for this
I'm always
visit.
pleased.
It's been such a lot.